working.
Yes.
Yeah.
My name is Tibor Sands. I was born Tibor Munkácsi in Hungary. I had a very bad crime. I was born Jewish, and it was considered a disadvantage. I had a family of sisters, half-sisters, half-brothers. I'm the only one in Hungary who survived. And I still wonder why me? Why did I survive? Why didn't the rest of my family survive? I will never know. I was drafted in the Hungarian army. Instead of a rifle, they gave me a shovel and a pickaxe, and I was working on bomb damage repair railroads until I went AWOL in September or October of September of '44, and I went into hiding in Budapest. The Hungarian Nazis caught me, and I escaped several times. They were not very bright, not very clever, so I knew exactly how to escape from them. However, on my 19th birthday, I remember the name, the date, because it was my birthday. They finally caught me and threw me into a cattle car in Budapest on December 9th, and I spent 18 days on the way to Buchenwald. There was very little food, very little water, just enough to survive. And I spent time in Buchenwald, which I'm not going to get into details, but you probably heard about it, until sometime in, I'm always thinking when it's February or March, they started evacuating Buchenwald, first the Jews, and I was the second transport leaving, marching out of Buchenwald and put into railroad cars again, and surviving an American fighter plane attack on a train that I was in. However, the fighters knew exactly that was a train of prisoners, and they were shooting at the engine, not the train. I might remember that in 1944, I think it was April 23rd, when I was liberated. We were on a road, and suddenly American troops appeared. There was not even any firing. They just came into the area where I was being transported on a march, and I was liberated. Thinking back what liberation is, I really didn't know. I was free, but free of what? I was a little, it was a little village, maybe 200 people lived there. About 5,000 prisoners got released out of trains and buses. In a few more days after being liberated and being taken care of the American troops, they let us loose. So you can imagine what 5,000 free prisoners could do to 200 inhabitants of a village. It wasn't nice. We demanded to be fed, and we walked to the next town in Bavaria, walked to the next town and the next town and the next farm, and demanded food. And when the natives ran out of food, I heard, actually I didn't say, people were slaughtering the horses. The prisoners went crazy. The ex-prisoners went crazy. And it was chaos, absolute chaos. It went on for about a week or 2 weeks of mayhem. I call it mayhem. Before the military police intervened and declared that all liberated people have to go to a camp, be in a camp. And just the word camp turned me off. I didn't want to go, so I refused to go to a camp, and I just wandered around with some friends, Bavaria, Germany, and we begged. We did a day's work for a farmer. We sometimes didn't do any work, but we promised we would, and we got fed. One day, I later found out there was a United Nations worker. They were armed. They used to wear army uniforms, so it was very hard to know where they belonged. Came and offered me a transportation to a children's camp, and I wouldn't have even want to hear about the word camp. I wouldn't go to a children's camp. And it went on, and finally they came and practically forced me into an ambulance and took me to a distant city named Munich. And he said, this is going to be your home until you go back to your native country. And my native country betrayed me. I would not go back to I want to go anywhere else in the world except back to Hungary. And when we got out of this ambulance, about 3 or 4 young people, I saw a church. It was a cloister, a place called Kloster Indersdorf. And I was very apprehensive about whether I even want to go inside. But I did go, and I will never regret it. I had experience in this DP camp that is coming back to me even today. Finally, I was in a civilized surrounding. I could take a bath, which I didn't take for a long time before that. I could take a real bath. I was fed real food, and people talked to me like I was a grown-up. I was 19 years old, and actually, the camp was only up to the age of 16, but the director of the Indersdorf Children's Camp said to me, well, you just tell them you're 16. And they documented me at age 16. I was a small 19. I'm still still small. In Indersdorf, food was available, and I found myself in a little group of Hungarian kids as a senior person. I was teaching them. I become a kind of teacher. I was teaching them how to eat properly, how to not drag the food. They were so accustomed to the bad days of concentration camp that when we sat down at the dining room table, they would grab the bread or whatever was on the table and put them in their pocket, because I didn't know if there would be food the next day. So I had to teach them to be moderate. I had to teach them how to eat with a knife and a fork instead of with their fingers. And apparently this camp, the United Nations camp, they called it camp, it was more like a school. Started getting visitors, photographers, cameramen, user camera. And one day they had a film crew who photographed them. And I had a half-brother, very famous, one of the world's most famous photographer, Martin Munkachi, who was a half-brother, but he would not, while I was in Hungary, never get in touch with me. I went to the director of this film crew and said, just what I just said, I have a half-brother in America, and I wonder if you know him. And he started laughing. He said, I don't know, there are 10 million people in New York, you know. When I said his name is Martin Munkachi, this man jumped up. He said, he's one of my best friends. And they immediately got in touch with him through the United Nations, and he acknowledged me. Finally, after 19 years, he acknowledged me that I am his half-brother. And he said, I want him to come to the United States and join me. And the director of the UN, Lillian Robbins, kept up the correspondence with my brother. So I was very, very lucky. And from then on, my day in Indersdorf was very rosy. I was just waiting for a permit to come to the United States, which never came. And when they started evacuating Indersdorf children's camp, I was offered asylum or a new home in several countries: Sweden, Switzerland, Portugal, I believe, France. All accepted children of the Holocaust. And I chose England. I figured England, I'm a little further west. I think getting closer to the United States. And in October of 1944, I went to England. The British government sent a plane, an RAF, military transporter, and took about 20 of us to England. and I lived in a children's hostel in Manchester, and studied privately, studied English, and as soon as I could, I moved to London and became an apprentice in a photography studio. And I was an apprentice for about a year. Then I got an offer I must have promised, I got an offer for a photography staff job at a different company, and I took it. And about 4 years later, my visa to America came, and I came to the United States. I was a skilled photographer by this time, and had a hard time finding a job. There were too many people looking for the same job I was looking for. And I got a job in a sweatshop, a tailor sweatshop. I knew how to sew. And I worked several years. Eventually I got a photography job for a fashion photographer. I worked with him for about 8 years. Then I had an opportunity to enter the motion picture business, and I became what they call a first assistant or a focus puller. And within 2 years, I became a most sought after focus puller in the United States. And for 30 years, people were fighting to get me to work on the movies. I worked with every big actor, every big director. I did The Godfather, I did Claude, I did I can't even remember the big pictures. I worked in the White House. I met the president. I had lunch with Jackie Kennedy. I had photographs of Johnson and myself. And I was extremely popular and extremely busy until I decided to retire. Work was too much, and I started working for a camera company that I used to work with. They hired me. Believe it or not, it's a German company out of Munich, and they treated me with tremendous respect. And even till today, they like me. I don't know how to say like me. They invite me to all their functions. I'm retirement. I'm 91 years old.
Oh wow!
And anybody wants to ask a question, I'll be happy to answer.
Where did you meet your lovely wife?
Well, maybe we should start off.
My wife Sarah, my lovely wife Sarah, will have to say.
Hey, well, let's start with.
Yeah, so maybe we should start with the history first before we go into the. So, any questions about? Yes.
Did you ever meet your half-brother?
Did you ever meet your half-brothers in the United States?
I had three half-brothers in the United States. The oldest one lived in Los Angeles. I never met him. He died pretty soon after I came to the state. I came in June 1950, and he died in September, before I had a chance. But the other brother, Mookie, and Martin did everything for me. Unfortunately, Martin, who was a millionaire before, he owned tremendous amount of real estate, 5 acres in a 15-room home. He went bankrupt. And he wasn't going to support me, but fortunately, I ended up helping him, and we loved each other suddenly.
What about your mother and sister and little niece back in Budapest?
When I was hiking out from the Hungarian Nazis in Budapest, I have my mother and my half-sister from my mother's side lived in a ghetto. Not a ghetto, but there was a designated building where only Jews could live. Allegedly it was protected by the Swedish consulate. And when they finally, the Nazis caught me, threw me into this wagon, I could have still escaped, but I was told that in the same train, about 40, 50 wagons, there is my mother and my sister are on the same train, and I decided I'd rather try to find them in a wagon, or at least at our destination, I can be there. But it turned out they were not in the train. It was the wrong information. They went into a ghetto in Budapest and survived. Several years later, I brought my mother out to the States, and she passed away.
And your sister also, what happened to his sister?
Your sister died the year I met you, your sister died the year I met you, something like Yoli.
Yes.
She died in the 70s,
Yes.
before I could meet her. But
Yes.
her little daughter and her grandchildren. And
The reason my brother Martin, who Life magazine those times declared the world's most famous photographer, didn't like me or didn't want me, that his father, my father, remarried after their mother died, and they didn't approve my mother. Well, they wouldn't have approved anybody, so when I was born, they just ignored me.
Other questions?
Can you tell us about your life in Munkac?
Oh, he didn't live in Munkac.
Lives
She
in
wanted to
Budapest.
know about your life. You weren't born in Munkac,
Just the name?
but no, just in Budapest.
Which village?
The father was from
Budapest.
Munkac in Transylvania.
Which village was?
Budapest.
He lived in the city of
No,
Budapest.
where he was born.
He was born in Budapest.
Budapest, yep.
Yeah.
I changed my name when I became an American citizen in 1956, officially to Sands. It was really out of a telephone book, turning the page and pointing a pencil. And from that, what was my first marriage, not this one. First marriage, I have 2 wonderful children. One is Robert, my son Robert, who is here, and my daughter Kim, whose daughter is here also. This girl traveled now from California to be here. She's been up 24 hours, so I think. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh,
Do you retain your Hungarian language? Do you still speak it?
Do you still speak Hungarian?
I speak Hungarian, and when I speak English, people will know right away you are Hungarian.
That's true. All right. Well, unless there's any other questions, I want to thank Tibor and Sarah.